He was boarding first class when he saw her, his ex-wife, the woman he had destroyed with his lies, and in her arms, a baby with his eyes, his dimples, his everything. She didn't see him yet, but in 30 seconds, their worlds are about to collide at 30,000 feet. Here's what happened next. Alexander Kane had boarded 1,000 flights in his 38 years. Private jets, first class, helicopters, travel was just another Tuesday for a man worth $6.2 billion. But as he stepped onto flight 847 to London, briefcase in hand, his entire world stopped moving. Row 12C. There she was, Olivia, his ex-wife, the woman he hadn't seen in 3 years, the woman whose heart he'd shattered with his paranoia and accusations, the woman he'd divorced because he'd been too broken to believe someone could love him without wanting his money. But it wasn't just Olivia that made his blood turn to ice. It was the baby in her arms. A little boy, maybe 2 years old, with dark, curly hair that felt exactly like Alexander's did when he was a child. The baby turned, and Alexander's breath caught in his throat. Those eyes, storm gray with flecks of green. His mother's eyes. His eyes. And that dimple on the left cheek when the baby smiled at Olivia, Alexander had the same one. The math crashed into him like a freight train. 3 years divorced. The baby looked about 2, which meant Olivia had been pregnant when he'd thrown those divorce papers at her, accusing her of only wanting his fortune, calling her a gold digger like all the others. She'd stood there, tears streaming down her face, not defending herself, just taking it. Then she signed the papers and walked out of his life. She'd been carrying his child, and she'd never told him. Alexander stood frozen in the aisle, passengers bumping into him, irritated voices telling him to move, but he couldn't. His eyes were locked on that baby boy who was currently trying to grab Olivia's necklace with tiny, perfect fingers. His son. He had a son, and Olivia still hadn't looked up. Olivia Laurent, she'd taken back her maiden name, was exhausted. 26 hours of traveling from Bali back to New York with an energetic 2-year-old was nobody's idea of fun. Little Theo was finally calm, playing with her necklace, and she was grateful for 30 seconds of peace before the flight took off. She'd specifically booked Economy Plus to avoid people like him, people from her old life, the life where she'd been married to New York's most eligible bachelor, living in a penthouse, attending galas, and slowly dying inside as her husband's trust issues poisoned everything beautiful between them. "Ma'am, I'm sorry, but you're going to need to move to your assigned seat." A flight attendant's voice cut through her thoughts. Olivia looked up, confused. "This is 12C, my ticket?" Then she saw him. Alexander Kane, standing in the aisle, 3 rows ahead, staring at her with an expression she'd never seen on his face before. Not anger, not the cold indifference he'd shown her during the divorce. This was raw shock, and something else. Something that looked almost like devastation. Their eyes met. Time stopped. She watched his gaze shift from her face to Theo, then back to her. She watched the exact moment he did the math, watched his face go pale, watched his hand grip the seat beside him so hard his knuckles went white. He knew. After 3 years of hiding, of building a life in Bali, teaching English and raising their son alone, Alexander Kane, the man who'd called her a liar and a gold digger, had just discovered he was a father. Theo chose that moment to giggle, a sound so pure and joyful that several passengers smiled, but Alexander looked like he might collapse. "Mama," Theo said, patting her cheek with his small hand, completely unaware that his entire existence had just detonated in his father's world. Olivia's heart was hammering. She had 2 choices: cause a scene or pretend she hadn't seen him and pray he'd just walk past. But Alexander was already moving toward her. Olivia. Her name came out of Alexander's mouth like a prayer and curse combined. He was standing right beside her row now, blocking the aisle completely, oblivious to the annoyed passengers behind him. "Please move," she said quietly, not looking at him, holding Theo closer. "You're blocking the aisle." "Is he mine?" Alexander's voice cracked on the last word. A businessman behind him huffed loudly. "Buddy, can you have your drama somewhere else? Some of us have connecting flights." Alexander didn't move. His eyes were locked on Theo, who was now staring at this tall stranger with curious gray-green eyes identical to Alexander's. "Sir, you need to take your seat." A flight attendant appeared, professional smile strained. "That's my son," Alexander said, not to the attendant, but to Olivia, his voice raw with emotion. "That's my son, and you never told me." The entire section went silent. Everyone was watching now. Olivia felt her face burn with humiliation and rage. Rage that had been buried for 3 years under survival and single motherhood and heartbreak. "Your seat is in first class, Mr. Kane. This is economy. You don't belong back here." The barb hit its target. She saw him flinch. Good. Let him feel 1 ounce of the pain she'd felt. "I need to talk to you," he said desperately. "No." She turned away, cuddling Theo, who was starting to sense the tension and whimper. "Olivia, please. You lost the right to ask me for anything when you threw divorce papers at me and called me a gold digger. When you said I was just like all the others only after your money. When you looked me in the eyes and told me you'd never believe I actually loved you. I was wrong." "Sir," the flight attendant was firmer now, "you need to return to your seat immediately or we'll have security remove you from this flight." Alexander looked desperate, trapped. Then he did something that shocked everyone. He sat down in the empty middle seat beside Olivia. "This seat's taken," Olivia lied. "I don't care. I'm not leaving." The flight attendant looked between them, clearly calculating whether this was about to become a bigger problem. Olivia could see the woman recognizing Alexander. His face had been on Forbes and Bloomberg enough times. "Ma'am, is this man bothering you?" the attendant asked quietly. Olivia wanted to say yes, wanted to have him removed, escorted away by security, publicly humiliated the way he'd humiliated her. But Theo was squirming now, upset by the tension, and causing a scene would only make it worse. "It's fine," she said through gritted teeth. "He can sit there." The attendant nodded reluctantly and moved away. The plane began pushing back from the gate. They were trapped together for the next 7 hours. Alexander was staring at Theo like he'd discovered a new species. "What's his name?" Olivia didn't want to answer, didn't want to give him anything, but she also saw something in his face she'd never seen during their marriage: vulnerability. "Theodore. We call him Theo." "Theodore? After your grandfather?" She was surprised he remembered. During their marriage, he'd rarely listened when she talked about her family. He'd been too consumed with work, with proving himself, with protecting his fortune from people he believed only wanted to use him. "How old is he?" 2 years and 3 months. Alexander did the math again. His face crumbled. "You were pregnant during the divorce. You were pregnant, and He couldn't finish the sentence. "Yes, I was 8 weeks pregnant, and I wasn't going to bring a child into a marriage where his father thought his mother was a con artist." "Why didn't you tell me?" His voice was agonized. "I finally looked at him, really looked at him, and let him see all the pain he'd caused. Because you made it very clear what you thought of me, and I wasn't going to let my son grow up with a father who looked at him wondering if he was just another scheme to access the Kane fortune." The plane was accelerating down the runway now. Theo pressed his face against Olivia's chest, scared of the noise. And Alexander looked like his entire world had just collapsed. 20 minutes into the flight, Alexander's phone, still in airplane mode but connected to the plane's Wi-Fi, began exploding with notifications. Someone on the flight had photographed their confrontation and posted it online. The headline was already trending. Billionaire Alexander Kane's secret love child exposed on flight. His PR team was in crisis mode. Business partners were calling. His mother, his cold, calculating mother who taught him that everyone had an agenda, was calling repeatedly. The stock for Kang Technologies was fluctuating wildly as investors panicked over unknown heirs and paternity scandals. Alexander ignored it all. He was watching Theo sleep against Olivia's shoulder, the baby's little chest rising and falling peacefully, completely unaware that his existence had just broken the internet. "I want a DNA test," Alexander said quietly. Olivia's eyes flashed with anger. "Of course you do, because you still don't trust me." "That's not—" He stopped, because she was right. Even now, even looking at a child who was clearly his biological copy, his first instinct was doubt. His mother had trained that into him well. Trust no one, Alexander. Everyone wants something. "He's yours," Olivia said coldly. "But go ahead, test him. Doubt me. It's what you do best." Alexander felt like he was drowning. "I have to protect your fortune, your image, your perfect controlled life?" Olivia's voice was bitter. "Congratulations, Alexander. You're about to be a father. Something you can't control, can't buy, and can't protect yourself from with prenups and NDAs." He wanted to argue, but she was right. He'd spent his entire adult life building walls, vetting everyone who got close, suspicious of every person who smiled at him. His ex-girlfriend before Olivia had sold stories to tabloids. His college best friend had tried to steal his first patent. Even his own uncle had attempted a hostile takeover of his company. So when Olivia, beautiful, kind, genuine Olivia, had walked into his life at a charity gala and didn't know who he was, he'd been captivated. She'd been a volunteer coordinator, thinking he was just another donor in a rented tux. They'd fallen in love fast and hard. And then his mother had gotten in his head. "She looked you up. She knows what you're worth. This is all calculated, Alexander." He'd let the poison in, let it destroy the only real thing he'd ever had. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "Sorry doesn't raise a child alone for 2 years," Olivia said, but her voice cracked. "Sorry doesn't pay for diapers and daycare on a teacher's salary. Sorry doesn't hold him when he cries and looks just like you, and I have to remember why his father isn't here." Alexander felt tears threatening for the first time in 20 years. The flight attendant brought drinks. Alexander ordered scotch, his first drink on a flight in 5 years. He needed it. Olivia asked for water and apple juice for Theo, who was waking up cranky from his nap. "Why Bali?" Alexander asked quietly. Olivia was helping Theo drink from a sippy cup. "Because it was far away from you. Far from New York and your world and everything that reminded me of how stupid I'd been to think someone like you could actually love someone like me." "Someone like you? Olivia, you are," he struggled for words. "You were the only person who ever saw me. Not my bank account, not my company. Me. Until your mother convinced you otherwise," Olivia said flatly. Alexander winced. She was right. His mother, Victoria Kane, had been relentless during their marriage. Small comments at first. "Isn't it convenient she needed that car fixed right after you started dating? Interesting that her student loans got paid off when you got engaged. Did you notice she insisted on no prenup?" Except Olivia had been the one to suggest the prenup. She'd insisted on it, actually, wanting Alexander to feel secure. But his mother had twisted even that. "She's playing you, making herself look noble so you'll trust her. Then she'll take you for everything." "My mother was wrong," Alexander said now, staring at his scotch. "I know that. I've known that for 3 years. But by the time I figured it out, you were gone." "You didn't look for me very hard," Olivia said, a challenge in her voice. I looked everywhere, Alexander said, his voice rising slightly, drawing looks from nearby passengers. He lowered it. I hired 3 different investigators. I went to your old apartment, your parents' house, your college friends. Everyone said they didn't know where you were. I thought. He stopped. You thought what? I thought you'd moved on, found someone else, someone who deserved you. His voice was raw with pain. Olivia was quiet for a long moment, bouncing Theo gently as he babbled to himself. When she spoke, her voice was softer. Your investigator found me in Bali 8 months ago. Alexander's head snapped up. What? A man came to the school where I teach, said he was hired by Alexander Kane to locate Olivia Laurent. I told him I wasn't her, that Olivia Laurent didn't exist anymore. Why? The word came out strangled. She finally looked at him, and he saw tears in her eyes. Because I'd spent 2 years building a life where I didn't cry myself to sleep, where I didn't see your face in my son's and feel my heart break all over again, where I was just Liv, the English teacher, not the gold digger ex-wife of a billionaire. You were never a gold digger. I know that, but you didn't. The truth of it sat between them like a third passenger. Hours into the flight, most passengers were asleep. The cabin lights were dimmed. Theo was passed out in Olivia's lap, and Alexander was watching his son sleep with an intensity that made Olivia's heart ache despite herself. He has my mother's nose, Alexander said quietly, surprising her. His mother, his grandmother, had died when Alexander was 10. He rarely spoke about her. I know, Olivia said softly. I've seen the photos you kept in your office. Alexander was quiet for a moment. Then, when my mother, Victoria, found out I was looking for you after the divorce, she told me something I'd never known. Olivia waited. My father cheated on her, multiple times, with women who pretended to love him for who he was, but really wanted access to the Kane fortune. One of them got pregnant on purpose, tried to claim the child was his to get money. It wasn't. DNA tests proved it. But the scandal almost destroyed my parents' marriage, and it definitely destroyed my father. He never trusted anyone again. Alexander's hand was shaking on his glass. Victoria raised me to be paranoid, to see every relationship as transactional, to never, ever let anyone close enough to hurt me like my father was hurt. That's not an excuse, Olivia said, but her voice was gentler now. I know, but it's an explanation. He turned to look at her, and she saw genuine anguish in his eyes. I've been in therapy for 2 years, Olivia, trying to untangle the damage, trying to become someone who could be a good father if I ever found you. This shocked her. Alexander Kane didn't do therapy. He did mergers and acquisitions and hostile takeovers and billion-dollar deals. He didn't do vulnerability. I fired Victoria from the company board, cut her off financially until she agreed to get help too. She fought me, said I was being manipulated by therapists who wanted my money, but I didn't care anymore. I lost you. I'd apparently lost my son. What was the point of protecting a fortune if I was completely alone? Olivia felt tears building. Alexander, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect anything. But I need you to know, seeing him, seeing Theo, it's not about my image or my money or controlling a situation. It's about the fact that I missed 2 years of my son's life because I was too broken to trust the only person who ever actually loved me. A tear rolled down Alexander's cheek. Actually rolled down. Olivia had never seen him cry, not once in their entire marriage. I want to know him, Alexander whispered. I want to be his father, not because of what people will think, or because of inheritance issues, or because of duty, but because he's half you, and I never stopped loving you. Everything changed an hour later when Theo woke up screaming. Not his normal cranky cry, a high-pitched shriek of genuine pain. His forehead was burning up. He's burning up, Olivia said, panic creeping into her voice. He was fine before. I don't understand. Alexander was immediately focused, pressing the call button urgently. What's his temperature normally? 98.6. He's never sick. I don't. Olivia was spiraling. The flight attendant appeared. One look at Theo's flushed face and labored breathing, and she was on the intercom. Is there a doctor on board? A woman from business class appeared, Dr. Sarah Chen, pediatric specialist. She examined Theo quickly while Olivia held him, his little body hot and trembling. His breathing is compromised, Dr. Chen said seriously. This could be a severe allergic reaction or an infection. Either way, he needs a hospital immediately. Alexander was already standing. Divert this plane now. The flight attendant looked uncertain. Sir, we're over the Atlantic. The nearest airport is... I don't care where it is. Divert this plane. His voice had the command of a man used to being obeyed. And if the airline has concerns about costs, I'll buy the entire goddamn plane. My son needs medical attention. 20 minutes later, Flight 847 made an emergency landing in Reykjavik, Iceland. Ambulances were waiting on the tarmac. The irony wasn't lost on Olivia. She'd kept Theo away from Alexander for 2 years to protect him from a father who might not care. And now Alexander was commandeering an international flight, ignoring protocols and costs, and hundreds of angry passengers, all for a child he'd known existed for less than 6 hours. In the ambulance, Alexander held Olivia's hand as she held Theo. She didn't pull away. She couldn't anyway. She was too scared. He's going to be okay, Alexander said firmly, like he could will it into existence. He's strong, like his mother. Olivia looked at him, really looked at him, and saw something she'd never seen during their marriage. A man who loved something more than his control, his company, and his carefully constructed walls. He loved their son, completely, instinctively, without question. And maybe he'd meant what he said about never stopping loving her. Don't leave, Olivia whispered. Whatever happens, don't leave us. Never.
Theo had a severe ear infection that had turned into sepsis, a life-threatening condition where infection spreads through the bloodstream. The Icelandic doctors worked quickly, starting IV antibiotics, monitoring his vitals, explaining in calm voices that they'd caught it in time. Alexander and Olivia hadn't left his side for 16 hours. They took turns holding his small hand, whispering to him, promising him everything would be okay. The hospital had offered them separate accommodations to rest, but neither would leave the room. It was 3 a.m. Iceland time when Theo's fever finally broke. He opened his eyes, looked at Olivia, smiled weakly, then turned and looked at Alexander with those identical gray-green eyes. "Dada?" Theo said, the word unclear but unmistakable. Alexander's face crumpled. He looked at Olivia, silently asking permission. She nodded, crying. Alexander moved closer to the hospital bed and carefully, gently touched his son's hand. "Hey, buddy, I'm here." "Dada," Theo said again, more confidently this time, and wrapped his tiny fingers around Alexander's one large finger. Alexander completely broke down. tears streaming down his face, shoulders shaking. This powerful billionaire who commanded boardrooms and brokered deals worth billions was utterly destroyed by a 2-year-old's grip. Olivia watched, her own tears falling, as Alexander leaned down and pressed a kiss to Theo's forehead. "I'm so sorry I wasn't there. I'm so sorry, buddy. But I'm here now. I promise. I'm here now." The doctor who'd been monitoring them stepped out quietly to give them privacy. Outside the room, nurses whispered about the billionaire who'd diverted a brain and was now sobbing over his son he'd just discovered existed. When Theo fell back asleep, stable and peaceful, Alexander turned to Olivia. "I need to tell you something. Something I should have told you 3 years ago." Olivia waited. "I was scared. Not of you taking my money, not of you using me. I was scared that if I let myself believe you loved me, really loved me, and then you left," his voice broke, "I wouldn't survive it. So I sabotaged us first. I pushed you away before you could leave me." "I was never going to leave you," Olivia whispered. "I know that now, but I didn't know it then. I didn't know how to trust it. How to trust that someone could love me without wanting something from me. And now?" Alexander looked at Theo, then back at her. "Now, I know I already lost everything that mattered once, and I'm not losing it again."
3 days later, they were still in Iceland. Theo was fully recovered and delighting the hospital staff by trying to repeat Icelandic words the nurses taught him. Alexander had canceled every meeting, pushed back every obligation, and simply stayed. On their last evening before flying back to New York, Alexander asked Olivia to walk with him. A hospital volunteer watched Theo, who was playing with toy cars and completely unbothered by recent events. They walked through Reykjavik streets in the perpetual twilight of an Icelandic summer evening. Finally, at a small park overlooking the harbor, Alexander stopped. "I don't want you to go back to Bali," he said. Olivia's heart clenched. "Alexander, wait. Let me finish." He took a breath. "I don't want you to go back to Bali, but not because I'm demanding it, not because I'm trying to control you, but because I want a chance, a real chance to be Theo's father, to be in his life, to not miss another moment." "You could visit," Olivia said quietly. "I want more than visits. I want bedtimes and breakfast and first words and scraped knees and terrible twos and everything. I want to be there. We can arrange custody. I don't want custody arrangements. I want—" He stopped, struggling. Then he pulled something from his pocket. Not a ring box, a key. "I bought a house. Well, 3 houses. One in New York, one in Bali, and one here in Iceland because Theo seemed to like it." Olivia stared at him. "You bought 3 houses in 3 days?" "I'm a billionaire, Olivia. It's literally the only thing I'm good at." He gave a weak smile. "The houses are in your name, all 3. No strings. You can live in any of them, none of them, sell them, whatever you want. They're yours, so you never have to depend on me financially. So you never have to worry that if I make you angry, you'll lose your home." Olivia was crying now. "Alexander." "But I'm asking, begging, for you to consider staying in New York. Not in my penthouse, in your house, so I can see Theo every day, so I can learn how to be his father. And maybe," his voice dropped, "maybe learn how to be the man you thought I could be when you married me." "I don't need houses," Olivia whispered. "I know. That's why I'm giving them to you." He stepped closer. "I'm not asking you to love me again. I know I destroyed that. But I'm asking for a chance to show Theo what a good father looks like. And maybe, if I'm very lucky, to show you that I've changed." Olivia looked at this man who'd broken her heart, who'd missed 2 years of his son's life, who'd just spent 72 hours proving he'd meant every word about being different. "I never stopped loving you," she admitted. "I was angry, hurt, betrayed, but I never stopped." Alexander's breath caught. "Olivia, but love isn't enough. It wasn't enough before." "I know. That's why I'm not asking for love. I'm asking for time. Time to prove I've done the work, that I'm not that scared, paranoid man anymore, that I can be someone worthy of you and Theo." She thought about Bali, her little apartment, her teaching job, her quiet life, safe, controlled, lonely. Then she thought about Theo asking, "Dada," and the pure joy on Alexander's face. She thought about her son having his father. She thought about second chances. "Okay," she said quietly. Alexander looked stunned. "Okay? Okay. We'll stay in New York. In my house," she emphasized. "And you can see Theo every day. But Alexander," she stepped closer, looking him in the eyes, "if you hurt him, if you let your paranoia poison his childhood, if you make him feel like he has to earn your love, I won't. I swear on everything I am, I won't." She searched his eyes and found truth there, raw, vulnerable, hard-won truth. "Then let's try," she said quietly. Alexander pulled her into a hug, careful, asking permission with his body language, sighing of relief when she didn't pull away. They stood there as the Icelandic sun refused to set, holding each other like people who'd been lost and finally found their way home. When they walked back to the hospital, Theo was waiting. He saw them together and beamed, reaching for both of them. "Mama! Dada!" And in that moment, surrounded by the wreckage of their past and the fragile hope of their future, they became what they'd always been meant to be: a family. Not perfect, not without scars, but together. Finally, beautifully, messily together. And that's how a chance encounter on a flight became a second chance at forever. Sometimes the universe forces us to face what we've lost so we can fight to get it back. If this story touched your heart, hit that like button and subscribe for more videos like this. Drop a comment. Do you believe people can really change, or is Olivia making a mistake? I want to hear your take. See you in the next story.